I had always wanted a little sister. I would beg my parents, please, please, and they'd roll their eyes and tell me that it wasn't as simple as I thought. That didn't stop me from talking about it every chance that I got, though. When they brought Sarah home, it was the happiest day of my life. She was so cute. I couldn't wait to share my toys with her. I started going through them, deciding which ones were hers, which ones were mine, and I kinda had to borrow my daddy's label maker. But I started to put our names on things, so we wouldn't have to get them confused. She cried a lot at first. I asked my parents why she cried so much. They just told me it was natural. They said when she got used to us and our house, she would calm down and not cry all the time. Sometimes, though, she'd cry so loud that Daddy would have to take her into the basement where it was soundproof, so the neighbours wouldn't complain. She slept in Mummy and Daddy's bed for the first month. Sometimes I'd try to join them, but they'd always lock the door. Mummy said that bed wasn't big enough for all of us to sleep in. I was patient. I knew that the bed with the bars they'd set up in my room would eventually be hers. When they felt it was safe, they'd let her sleep on her own. They started putting her in it. She wasn't crying so much anymore by then, so I would lie in my bed and watch her sleep from across the room. They'd take her into their bedroom first and lay with her until she fell asleep. Then move her to our room. Some nights after she was moved, I'd see her lying there and her eyes were open, just staring at the ceiling. So I'd go over and give her toys through the bars. A lot of the time she'd just throw the toys and then start crying. And I'd have to hide under my covers before Daddy came in to deal with it. Eventually, they started letting Sarah sit in the playroom with me. I was told I wasn't allowed to give her anything too small or sharp that she could hurt herself with. I was so happy. I would sit behind her and brush her hair and tell her she was the best little sister in the world. I showed her which toys were hers and which were mine, but she didn't seem to care. Sometimes we'd sit on the window seat and she'd bang on the windows while I drew on it with special crayons. School started back up at Sugar Creek Elementary, and I went, but Sarah had to stay at home. Mummy said she wasn't ready for school yet. I'd come home and tell Sarah all the stuff I'd learned. I drew pictures of us playing together. When I showed them to Daddy, he'd tell me thank you and take them to keep in his office. Then came the really bad day. I'll never forget it. I came home from school and Mummy was just sitting at the table, smoking. She looked real sad. I went to play with Sarah, but I couldn't find her. When I went to ask Mummy where she was, she started crying. My mummy started crying. I asked her what was wrong, and she said that Sarah was gone. I understand totally. Well, I didn't. But I started crying too, and said, we need to find her. She just shook her head and said she was gone. Somewhere we couldn't go. Daddy took her bed apart. He threw away all my drawings with her in them. He took my name tags off all the toys. Sometimes I'd find one he'd missed and it'd make me cry. I started collecting them and hiding them, but he found where I hid them one day by accident and got real mad. We weren't allowed to talk about her. It was like she never existed. My own little sister never existed. I still don't think it's fair. I told Mummy that Daddy was mean to make us not talk about Sarah. But she said it was for the better and I would understand when I was older. Yeah, sure. Like I understand. But I saw Sarah again. It was just one time, but I'll never forget it. I was with Mummy doing errands. We went grocery shopping. Then we went to a fabric shop in town, so Mummy could look at material to make some new curtains out of. She remembered that she had letters to mail, so we stopped at the post office to buy some stamps. I was humming to myself and reading posters while Mummy talked to the lady behind the counter. That's when I saw Sarah. She was just as cute as I remembered, maybe even more. I walked over and looked at the poster with her picture. But they'd gotten her name wrong. Someone had written her name down as Shannon. I rushed over to Mummy and tugged on her sleeve and told her that Sarah was up on the wall with the pictures of the children. Sarah was right there! But she got all flustered and apologised to the kind lady before dragging me out of the post office by the ear, might I add. I had to shout and yell because she kept talking over me instead of listening. I saw Sarah. They got a picture on the wall in there. Finally, Mummy slapped me and told me it wasn't Sarah. And that it may have looked like Sarah, but I was mistaken. And if I didn't stop, I'd get in real trouble with Daddy when he got home. I cried and promised to be good. But even after I promised, I wasn't allowed to have dinner and had to sit in my room that night. Later in that night, though, I heard Mummy and Daddy talking in the kitchen. They got kind of loud. Somebody started banging open the kitchen drawers, and then Daddy's feet stomped up the stairs. But then I heard Mummy scream, "Don't you dare! Don't you dare!" And he stopped outside my room. Then his footsteps went back downstairs. We never went back to the post office, and I never saw Sarah again. This is the first time I've talked about Sarah since that day with the knife.